There you go. That's why you're in charge.
Oh yeah. Okay, or maybe start at 30 or 33 is a message I just texted. Okay, loud and clear. Yes, so thank you guys all for joining. We're going to give it a couple minutes, and both Lisa and I have very vocal birds outside of our windows, which we love. It means spring is coming, but just a little soundtrack for your Tuesday evening.
Do you want to maybe chat about format, kind of just as we're starting to?
Yes. So we had our lovely social team put a question and answer box on social, and we received like over 80 questions, which is awesome. And obviously we're not going to keep you here until midnight answering all of them. That being said, there was a ton of repeats. So we're going to try to cover the large majority of the repeats and also just have like a regular dialogue. We're going to tell you a little bit about us. We have an agenda here that I'll pop over in a second. And then we're going to hopefully empower a lot of you to take some easy action and just explain, like break things down a little bit. Is that what you meant by format?
Yeah, pretty much. And we have the, just because we had so many registrants, I think we had over 500 registrants, which is insane. I was telling Kitty, like, I'm so happy to have the momentum. I'm not happy to have the momentum, but I'm happy to have the company in this. Like, this is a terrible fight that needs to be fought, but there's so much strength in numbers and we're so much stronger together. So anyways, all that said, we turned the chat off for right now, just as we're kind of getting our footing with this, but if people have follow-up questions, there'll be a follow-up survey. You can find us on Instagram. We have an email on the website. There's like so many ways to contact us. So hopefully we cover questions today, but if we don't cover your question, there's ways to follow up.
Like my ADD brain, when I've done this for my paying job, like I just look at the chat and then suddenly it's like so many people, it's like you can't keep up with it. So for the purposes of today, we have just turned it off, but we do have 80 questions to work with. Okay, 32, we're still going up in attendees. I'll at least move into the agenda slide. And don't worry, this is not a presentation, everyone, do not fret. So I guess first, before I do the agenda, my name is Kitty Brandtner. I am the founder and co-president, off to a hot start, of March 4th, a 9-month-old organization. And I am joined by one of my OG volunteers, our PR co-lead. You can introduce yourself, sorry.
Hey, yeah, so hi, I'm Lisa Derus. I have been so honored to be supporting March 4th and Kitty in this organization since just after the Highland Park shooting in July, which was 9 months ago today. What a milestone. So yeah, I think we're just so overwhelmed not overwhelmed, but like humbled by the number of people that have shown interest in joining this fight and getting involved. Maybe people here have been involved in gun violence prevention before, or maybe this is like your first foray and you're like, what is the gun violence organization space? So yeah, we're just kind of hoping to do like a little fireside chat town hall and share a little bit about our organization, what we're doing in 2 weeks in DC, and hopefully get folks on board to join.
The other thing we wanted to open with is, we know today was unfortunately heavy for a lot of people. And the reality is a lot of days in America are heavy like this, but this is the 9-month mark since the Highland Park mass shooting, as Lisa mentioned. And then the Highland Park High School was in a hard lockdown today after there were reports of individuals with weapons at the school. So I know I was crying today, and I'm not a mass shooting survivor. I didn't go to Highland Park. I went to New Trier. Like, I think it impacts all of us. And so I know, and we share the rage, and we're so sorry for those that have been re-traumatized and traumatized. But we're hopeful that this will help. We will try to keep this to an hour. We know everyone's time is precious, and we decided to do this 24 hours ago, so really on brand. But so we're going to talk about our mission. So there's many of you who have been with us since the beginning and many new faces. And like Lisa said, we're glad you're here. We're not glad about the fact that you had to be here, but we're glad you're here nonetheless. We're going to do a quick overview of the assault weapons ban, what it is, what it was, because it did exist, and kind of just like the state of the union.
Yeah.
We
know a lot of people here are maybe from the Chicago area or have ties to the Chicago area, but we're not like a Highland Park based organization. We're really just people that have been mobilized and galvanized by mass shootings over the last however many years to jump into this fight. As Kitty said, she's never been directly impacted by a mass shooting, neither have I. But so much of this work, and we'll kind of talk about this, but like so much of this work is carried by people who have survived the mass shootings, who have lost loved ones to mass shootings, who have been directly traumatized. And like, if this is the least that like we can do to help take some of that weight off of their shoulders. Like I just texted with one of the families from Uvalde and I was like, hey, we've got 500 people we're about to onboard. Like we're joining you, we're helping you. Like this is their life's mission that they never signed up to be in. So it's really powerful that we can just kind of like help them bear this cross.
And it's like, it already happened to them. Like it already happened to them and they're willing to fight for us. So like, it's our turn to step up. And that's what we're hoping to, really activate. So we're going to talk about the most common questions we got and just our march. And then just for a visual, there are many of you who weren't there in July, which is totally fine. And I wasn't involved in this work but 4 or 9 months ago. I like donated to Mom's Demand here and there. But this is kind of just a glimpse into what happened a week after the Highland Park mass shooting and just over a month after the Uvalde mass shooting. We brought a lot of people to DC and we called for a federal ban on assault weapons. And like, there's so much value in using your voice. So I am going to stop sharing because again, we're not doing a presentation, we're chatting here. But to start, we wanted to kind of just start from the beginning and talk about how this started. So I guess we can do that. So
yeah, can you tell us how this organization was founded and why?
Yeah, so as I look through my phone, like, because I take screenshots and like, your like Instagram stories stay. So like I've like reflected over the past 9 months and looking back and kind of like seeing breadcrumbs before this started of like where my brain was, because I certainly don't remember, but Uvalde completely wrecked me. Like Sandy Hook wrecked me, but I didn't have kids at the time. And I think for those of us who are parents of younger kids, Uvalde was like, hold on, like, why didn't the world completely stop after that? And my husband and I went overseas after that. And like, it's all I could talk about. And I kept talking with parents from like England and France and Germany and New Zealand and Australia and like all these different places, but they all said the same thing. They were all like, oh my God, how horrible, but we'll never understand because like we can't, it's so hard for us to get a gun, let alone
such a uniquely American problem.
And I'm like, why is it our like we're insane? Like they're looking at us like, and we're thinking like, this is what it is. And so I think that planted a seed and then it hit home. I was at the Winnetka, what's it called, parade with my 3 kids for their first parade after COVID. And suddenly we're getting texts from friends like, we're running, there's an active shooter. And at first you're like, no, like maybe no. And then suddenly we're sheltering in place with locked windows and doors, hiding from someone that was at large with an AR-15. And I started initially, honestly, I started Googling Toronto suburbs. And I'm like, okay, my husband, I'm like, we're moving, like I'm out, we're not doing this anymore. And he was like, we can't run, like we can't just run. And I'm like, okay, well, what can we do? So I ended up just posting on Instagram, like, I'm pissed, first asking, can President Biden call an executive order and just ban these weapons? Like, what am I missing? And then asking, like, does someone really need an AR-15? Like, maybe I'm naive, which I am naive. And I just kept getting such response of like, no, like, what the hell? And so I went to bed on the 5th after posting, hey, I think I want to go to DC, scream at the top of my lungs and call for a ban on assault weapons. Does anyone want to come? And then Lisa was one of the people that said, yep, right?
Except I didn't actually go to the march. And I think that's something that we want to talk about here. And that was certainly a big question that we kept getting. Like, I can't go to DC on the 17th. How can I support at home? Like, I wasn't at the first march either. I was on maternity leave and had a 6-month-old at my feet and was like firing off emails to reporters and like doing all this stuff. And then, because I think that's a common question that we got about, how can I get involved with the organization, whatnot. And I think we'll get to that. But yeah, I think I had a similar experience with this, right? Like, I had always been upset about mass shootings and had seen them. And then it took me until kind of getting really involved in this work to be like, oh, there is a proven evidence-backed way to end mass shootings, to halt mass shootings. Like, we had an assault weapons ban federally for 10 years from 1994 until it expired in 2004. And there was a 70% reduction in mass shooting deaths. And like, connecting those dots for me was like, oh, why don't we have this? Like, exactly what you said. Why don't we have a federal ban on assault weapons? And how can we get this back?
And I think what's important is like, we came in hot to this gun violence prevention community that has existed for decades. And like, there's so many awesome groups, and mass shootings are 1% of gun violence. Like, that's the scary reality. And I have chills thinking about that. But it's not to say, so it's like, there's enough room for all of us to be doing stuff. And there's so many laws that need to be passed and so much action that needs to be taken. And I think for my ADD brain, it was like, I want to focus on one thing. And if we can take these weapons that are literally made for war out of the hands of civilians, I think we should do that. And I don't believe that's a political thing. I think you can be red or blue. I think you can vote in different ways and believe that civilians shouldn't have access to.
Yeah. And honestly, like, this world is really complicated. This world is really hard. I had joined another gun violence prevention group several years prior, and it felt kind of, like you said, it's a really complicated space. And this is one thing that I've always felt very strongly about. And then learning more about assault weapons, I'm like, why the absolute heck are these legal? They were designed for the battlefield. They were designed to kill people as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Why can anyone just go buy one at the store and then walk into a public space and shoot a bunch of people who are going to die very quickly? It makes no sense to me. And so for me, this has been like connecting that dot to being like, oh, there is an easy, proven way to end mass shootings. We need to like put all of our weight behind fighting for this.
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions we got are like, how do you talk about this? And like, there's people on the other side of this issue. And like, I think it just always comes back to like, this is a really simple, evidence-based solution. It is not a solution to gun violence, and it certainly won't end all mass shootings. Like, we're not idiots, but it existed for 10 years, and there was a significant decrease in these atrocities. And then when it expired, the mass shooting epidemic in America took off. And now we're at a point where it's like, this is our students in America are like, yeah, we go on lockdown like every other week. And like, we never know if it's a hoax. It's like, wait, hold on. When did this become normal? Like, so I think it's important to think about the logic. Like, the law existed. It didn't infringe upon anyone's Second Amendment rights. This isn't a gun grab. It's just weapons that were made to fire off insane amounts of rounds in a short amount of time. And then we'll talk about this. I know, Lisa, we've talked about going into this, but there is like this gross reality of what the weapons actually do.
Yeah.
In comparison to regular firearms, that like, this shouldn't even be a conversation.
Yeah. I think we're like dancing around some of these questions. So like we said, we're trying to kind of approach that. I mean, I was like, this is a little fireside chat. We also did enough Zoom calls with like actual presentations, but I'd love to dive into some of these questions specifically. So, okay. Let's start with, is it realistic that a ban could pass given that Republicans control the House now?
So we fundamentally believe that you can be in either party and believe that an assault weapons ban should be passed. It happened in 1994. Like, in order for something to be a law, parties have to agree, not the entire party. We're not naive to think that, Ted Cruz is going to be like, actually, I think I do want this. That being said, like, if enough we know that over 60% of Americans want a federal ban on assault weapons, and that's based on the polling. So this is something the majority of Americans want. It's common sense. You can be in favor of the Second Amendment and support an assault weapons.
Mm-hmm. We have a lot of gun owners in our organization. We have a lot of people that support the Second Amendment. We don't have civilians that can go buy machine guns. Like, it is okay to have regulations around the kind of weapons that people have access to. And like you said, this law was in place for 10 years and was a proven way to reduce mass shooting fatalities and mass shooting incidents. So
what the ban is like, this is another, misconception, is I think people are like, come and take my guns. And we're like, no one's coming to take your guns. Any assault weapon that has been legally purchased, grandfathered in, like, keep it. We know that at least 30% of mass shooters obtain their weapon within 30 days of committing the mass murder. And so we can mitigate that if we please stop the sale and manufacturing of assault weapons. So,
and that's exactly what this bill is. It bans the sale of assault weapons everywhere across the country. It doesn't take away guns that already exist in people's homes, but to your point, a large number of guns that are used in mass shootings are purchased within a month of that mass shooting. So just stopping the sale would have a huge impact, most likely on mass shooting incidents.
Yeah. And then just to get back to the question, like what we saw last year, the House, so this is like going back to like, I'm just a bill, for those of us that House rock, the House and the Senate, the Congress makes the laws. So things have to pass the House and the Senate, and then the president can sign it into law. So last year, after our first march, 2 weeks after, the House had a vote on the assault weapons ban and they passed it. So the Senate then had to have a vote and pass it in order for it to get to law. Unfortunately, despite our begging and everyone's begging, the Senate literally looked at us and was like, we don't have time. We're not going to do that this year. And we're not letting them off the hook. Here we are. But like we have momentum, people. So while the Republicans do have a majority in the House, we're starting in the Senate. And that's why a lot of our focus is like, call your senators, call Chuck Schumer. He needs to bring this to a vote. Like if we don't demand action, they won't do it.
Yeah. These people are paid to represent us and to pass laws that represent the will of the people. So if we don't demand that they listen to us, and we know that a majority of Americans support the assault weapons ban. We know that so many parents like us,
like we want both parties to realize if you vote yes for this, we'll have your back.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny, like we keep coming back to this thing like, oh, what do we want? It's relatively simple. Like it's just a federal ban on assault weapons. But as you just described, it's not as easy as just like, oh, let me just call my senator and they can sign it into law tomorrow. Like hypothetically, it could be pretty straightforward, but we know that we need to get a couple critical steps. We need to get the Senate bill to pass, the House bill to pass in either order, and then we need the president to sign it into law. The president has said multiple times after every mass shooting, in between mass shootings, for basically multiple times a year for as long as he's been alive, he wants the federal assault weapons ban. Like we have the president's support, but yes, we need to get it to these through these two houses. And this shouldn't be a partisan issue, right? This is a human issue. We know that guns are the #1 killer of children. Like that is such a sobering statistic. If your child dies in this country, the most likely reason is because they were shot.
Yeah, like no, if it were any other product, we would pull it from the shelves. Like it would not be an issue. So why are guns and assault weapons any differently?
And we know that the majority of those deaths and injuries are not assault weapons. We know that it's everyday handgun violence and it's disproportionately affecting Black and brown communities. We also know that gun violence is a very complicated issue, and this is one very proven way to reduce harm. So it's very complicated. Again, for me, this is like such a no-brainer that it drives me crazy that we don't have it. Okay. A question about the state assault weapons ban. So Colorado has a bill for an assault weapons ban. Should I focus my attention and support for the national or the state level?
So all of this is momentum. Illinois just passed one. I am friends with one of the legislative leads, I think is the title, at Mom's Demand, who is a big champion of this. and Illinois passed it. This is momentum. But what we know is that guns don't respect state lines. So if you, I mean, I think about it as like, if we banned beer in Illinois and I was, you know, a 21-year-old, like I'd drive to Wisconsin and get the freaking beer. Like we need to ban them completely. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. And I would just build on that. I think there's 9 states plus the District of Columbia that already have a statewide assault weapons ban. And then there's at least 2 or 3 more that are being strongly considered. Washington State is one, Colorado's one. Like you said, Illinois just passed one. If it can happen in these states, like it can happen federally. Again, these state legislatures are representing the will of the people, and there's so much momentum for this. We just need to tell our representatives, pass this ban.
So and we will give you, like, I promise you, you will walk away and have some call to actions. To what I want to just point out really quick, and we'll move on to the next question, is one of the things we've learned through lobbying and meeting with both Republican and Democrat offices is the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which was the first piece of gun legislation to pass in 30 years. Did it solve everything? No. Did it ban assault weapons? No. But was it something? Yes. One of the reasons it passed was because the politicians felt a groundswell of pressure and consistent outreach. Like they were like, after Uvalde, you couldn't ignore it. And so we're trying to create that again. Like we have these peaks and valleys of outrage. And unfortunately for our mental health, like a lot of us have to tune this out in order to survive, but we have to be able to like survive past the news cycle and be like, this is our number one issue. This needs to happen now. And it's a national emergency.
It's a public health crisis, right? We have a medical petition that over 4,000 physicians and medical providers have signed. We brought over 60 physicians to DC in December to stand out there and say, this is not a partisan issue. This is a public health crisis that requires a public health solution. Our federal government has the power to do that. We just need to, again, tell them to listen to the majority of Americans, and the pissed off moms like us and the people in this Zoom right now. Yeah. Like we need this ban.
Like stay loud. So one of the things I do want to make sure we cover is the calls. So if those of you who follow us, like call your senator, like we give you scripts and all of that. And that's why this matters, is like they have to hear from us. Do you know who's calling them every day? People that are afraid, that don't want them to pass any sort of gun legislation. Yep. And so like we are going up against the gun lobby. The gun lobby is this big scary boogeyman, but it is very effective and very real. And so not only do they have a shit ton of money, and they have, which means money equals a consistent lobbying presence. So they are like mosquitoes in these politicians' ear, like, don't you do that, don't you pass that, here's the reason, oh, we've got all the support, blah, blah, blah. So we need to do the exact same thing, but in reverse of like, you better pass it, you better pass it, this is the most important thing. And that's why we need you to call every day. Like it can't be this and this and this, it has to be like, okay, they're not getting like relentless. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
I mean, it totally makes sense to me. Okay, another question. How often do I call?
Okay, you should only call once a day, but you should call every day, please. Senator Schumer, he is the majority leader in the Senate. And so he has the ability to call any bill to the floor for a vote. Any bill. That's why in addition to calling your representatives, we ask you to call him to put pressure, because he could bring this to a vote tomorrow. Yeah.
What happens? Oh my God, should we role play a call?
Yeah. Okay, great.
No, we don't actually have to, but what happens when you call? So you call, and I used to intern at a senator's office, and like, it's a lot of interns that are taking these calls, by the way. So like, you don't have to be afraid that someone is going to like be on the other phone and grill you. Like it might just be a 19-year-old who's like taking notes into a computer. But so you basically call and you say,
hi, I'm Kitty Brandtner. I am calling to urge Senator Schumer to call the assault weapons ban bill to the floor. You can say that. You can say S25, which is the name of the bill. That's literally all you say. And then
you could also give a personal reason if you're feeling confident. I have cried on the phone to 1 or 2 of these staffers and interns, but yeah, you can make it personal, and then they take that information, they literally tally at the end of the day, and then they report it to their boss, and then they let them know it's the voice of the people, right? Like this is what the people care about today. You're voicing your support for the federal assault weapons ban. We got a question too about, okay, so who you should call. So Senator Schumer Senate Majority Leader Schumer is the one who controls if this bill will go to a vote. We also need what's called co-sponsors, which are like public supporters of this bill. So we're really targeting a handful of states. And I think this is in the toolkit that we've put up on our website. There's a handful of states where we really need, or we think we can get people to sign on as co-sponsors, which like adds more momentum for these bills. If your senator already supports the bill, or you think there's like absolutely no chance that they would, you also have representatives that you can call. You have 2 senators and 1 US representative that represents you. You can like Google this information and find it if you don't already have it. There's also a lot of relational organizing that can be done. Like as a PR person, I am such a big believer in the power of like grassroots communications and organizing. Like something as simple as like taking those Instagram posts that we put up every day and sharing it on your network, or texting your friends that live in a certain state. Hey, you live in Colorado. We need XYZ person to sign on to this. Can you call them? Send emails, like hassle your work people. There's a lot you can do that's not just calling your people.
Yeah, because we always get the question, can I call other people's representatives? Like technically you can, but each representative and member of Congress is going to focus on what their constituents are saying, because their constituents voted in office. And so if you can like galvanize your own network to call, to be loud, and to stay consistent, that's a huge deal. Like we need to do that.
Yeah. And call, get your friends to call. Again, the power of sharing stuff on social media. Like a couple of years ago, we weren't seeing, I think this much conversation about gun violence and like whatever, but I don't know. I'm such a huge believer in sharing at the grassroots level. Okay. Another question. How are efforts currently going? AKA, are the calls working? Are the people in power forgetting about us right now because of Trump? Is there really hope? What kind of challenges lie ahead? How big is this mountain? Is this possible?
Okay.
A lot of questions.
I was going to say that was 11 questions, but as we know, I talk fast and I say a lot, so I totally vibe with that person. This is possible, you guys. Like zoom out. We are asking for a law that was in place and worked and saved lives to be a law again. This is not hard. Like we always say, I think I even have it on the slide at the end, surviving a mass shooting is hard. The flick of a pen to put a law into action, that's not hard. So don't let people tell you that it's too difficult. Change happens when there is a groundswell of consistent support and noise. And so the media cycle will go like this. There's a lot of things to cover. That's okay. We have to rise above and be like, we still care, we still care, we still care. And that's what we're here to do, is be that for you, give you those reminders. Everyone has busy days, but like, oh, did you call Schumer? Did you call Schumer?
Yeah.
We want to help elevate that.
Yeah. It's our job to call, and it's the federal government's job to respond to a national emergency.
Yeah. I mean, it is. Guns are the #1 killer of kids. It should end at that.
Yeah. I mean, as a relatively new mom myself, I cannot believe the amount of like safety data and recalls. I mean, there's like spinach recalled every week. And like, where's the recall on these guns?
Yeah. If it was any other product. Okay. What other cues we got?
A good pivot. Okay. Love this question. Can we organize a massive march on DC to show lawmakers how serious we are?
I hope to God one of our volunteers planted that, because man, do we have news for you. And actually we can, so marches matter. I think a lot of people are like, what's it really going to do? And like, does this impact? Yes. We can actually point to, and I'm not taking full responsibility for passing the House law or the House bill last year, but we can point to 500 people going to DC in July of 2022, and 2 weeks later, a House bill that had sat collecting dust for almost 2 years being brought to the floor, voted on, and passed. Like, if we show up in front of the 535 members of Congress who actually have the power to do something about this public health crisis, then we should. Yeah. So it's hard to make it happen. I totally empathize and know that. And we have to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's been so many organizations doing this work for so many years. And like, we are the, newest kids on the block, but we have so much energy, so much momentum. And, I don't know, there's so much power in like, I mean, we're a group of mostly women, right? Like a lot of moms, like there's so much power in that. And I think, to your point, we've really been able to show up and like show momentum, and like we have momentum and we need to keep showing up. So we need to continue the public pressure. Like Congress is back. They're back on April 17th, which is the exact day that we are having.
We're coming in hot the day they come back.
Yeah.
And I know, I think like people are like, oh, can you organize with March for Our Lives? Can you make sure Moms Demand in every town are coming? And there's like so many amazing groups doing so much amazing work in the gun violence prevention sphere. Everyone has, unfortunately, like hundreds of priorities, because the assault weapons ban, like we've said, is just one piece of the puzzle. And so it's really hard for us to ask, we'll ask and we have, it's hard for anyone to be asked, drop everything you're doing and do our thing. So we invite everyone, and we have great connections with the leaders of all of these orgs. There's like so much community, and we've been welcomed to this. But don't be like angry if another org isn't posting the march. Like, just invite them. Everyone's welcome. Yeah. We're all in this together.
Yeah. I think that's great. Do you want to just give an overview of like what exactly is going to happen on the 17th?
Yeah. So I'm looking at this image that you guys can't see, but I'm going to do it again. So that's our friend, the Capitol. So we're going to start on the National Mall, which like, I hadn't remembered much about DC since like our 8th grade trip back in the day, but this big strip of lawn in between the Lincoln Memorial and Washington Monument. If Maureen's on here, I hope to God I'm doing that right. But we will begin on the National Mall. We will hand out t-shirts. So that's why we really need you to register for the march, because we need to make sure we have enough free t-shirts. And then we will march. We will have free signage for you, ban assault weapons now, etc. And we will march to save our students. We named it that, SOS, because this is a public emergency. Like, our students are dying in classrooms. It's absolutely sickening. I know everyone here is sick about it. We will be marching for about, what is it, a mile, 2 miles? I don't know, enough time until we get to the Capitol. There will not be like a rally in terms of speakers. We will just be marching, and then afterwards we'll have a little bit of programming, 1.5 miles, I was just told. We will have some programming around what else you can do. We will be doing some what's called literature drops, lit drops, in offices of members of Congress. So I promise you, if you come, you will feel empowered. You will feel like you are making a difference, and you will be making a difference.
Can you tell me more about the literature drops?
I can try. So we have this lovely government affairs team. Essentially, so going back to the gun lobby here, they're there all the time, and we need to be there all the time. So we are going to basically break out into a bunch of different pods. Like I mentioned before, there's 535 members of Congress. So 435 in the House and 100 in the Senate. Our goal in Dreamland is we hit every single office with a piece of paper. It's kind of like, I'm thinking old school sales, like, which is, like back in my grinding days where I'd be like, hi, this is Kitty. Like, I'm just here and I want you to know this. We walk into the offices, which is something you're allowed to do. We say, we're here to support the assault weapons ban. We drop off a piece of paper and we show up. Like, most of life, there's someone, that quote, I forget who said it. Most of life is just showing up. So we do that. Does that answer?
Yeah. And I mean, we keep going back to this point, like these people are elected and paid to represent us and to pass bills and look, can you guys hear me? Oh,
I stopped sharing my screen.
Okay. My, screen went away, but no, like the National Mall is America's front yard or backyard. And like, we have the opportunity and the invitation to like peacefully enter the Capitol and go talk to these representatives. Again, these people that are paid to pass laws on our behalf. So like, they better listen to us. So I think to your point, the gun lobby's there all the time. Like, we need to be there all the time also. And that's why it's so important. There are so many great GVP work groups doing this work. And like, this is the work that we're doing.
Love it. I do have like my co-president real quick, like Maureen or Lisa and I on our leadership team. Maureen Westfall has spent almost 20 years lobbying. Like, she knows the ins and outs. She is like the yin to my yang. And I think I explained this on some interview, but like, when I'm like, can we just put everyone's faces on billboards and say they support mass shootings until they vote for this? And she was like, no. Like, she reels me in and helps us navigate how to actually effectively do this. And so we have an amazing champion in her in the GA team. Government.
Yeah. I mean, we have so many fantastic volunteers, and I think that we're really humbled by the number of people that have signed up to volunteer with us, to donate, to follow us on social media. Like, it's so unfortunate to have the momentum, because we know that this momentum comes from the loss of more lives. Like, the tragedy in Nashville is absolutely horrific. But again, this is like why we need to show up, because we need to stop this.
And the march is at 11:30 in the morning Eastern time. So you can make this a day trip, come in the morning, leave in the afternoon, just a quick civic duty check.
It's like you are saying that directly to my sister, who is on this Zoom right now, and I'm trying to convince to come with me. So
do it. Do you want me, oh, we don't need to do takeaways just yet. Do you want to do another question or two?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I just had one.
Sorry.
What's the most effective way to help? Time or money donated?
So we have, it's like in an ideal world, both, but the disgusting reality and what we've learned in the past 9 months is like money talks. And we're going up against these behemoth organizations that are funded by the profits of selling guns. So like, of course, they're going to lobby to sell more guns. We can't put money of like the ROI of keeping people alive, unfortunately. You'd think that that would matter to Congress, but like, so the answer in short, donations. Donations matter so much. We have to put our money where our mouth is, put our big boy hands on, and like go up against this insane gun lobby. And also come to the march.
Okay. Why raise the age of the Nashville shooter was 28?
I agree. We should just ban assault weapons.
Yeah. I mean, that question kind of answers like why we shouldn't just raise the age. There is a ton of evidence showing that raising the age from 18 to 21 does make a difference, because we know that teenagers make really rash, bad decisions sometimes. But ultimately, we feel like these weapons are so lethal. They were uniquely designed to mutilate human flesh on the battlefield. They're so powerful. They're so lethal. Like, they just should not be owned by anybody. I'd
like to just highlight that real quick. And this is, I hate this term, because trigger warning for anyone that has been impacted by a mass shooting, that I'm about to talk about the impact of the mass shooting. But I think one of the most powerful pieces of information and testimony is what we heard from Roy Guerrero, the doctor, the only pediatrician in Uvalde. He explained to Congress, like, kind of pulling back the curtain on what these weapons do. And this is what a bunch of our physician subcommittee has said too. These weapons explode organs. They decapitate. He's like, I can't reattach a head. These weapons destroy the human body. There is no saving an assault weapon wound. So
yeah, and I think that's kind of the disconnect with like, oh, what makes these weapons different? It's like, no, these are not. Again, they're not used for hunting. They're not used for fun. Like, they are designed for one thing, and it's really brutal. Okay, let's get through a couple more questions, and I think we can go to the wrap up with kind of next steps and what people can do immediately. So, teacher and mom here, is there anything you need from teachers specifically?
I, again, feel like these were planted. Yes, we have a teacher's specific petition. We will be sharing a bunch of stuff at the very end, but petitions matter, and here's why. We can't bring thousands of people into a meeting room in Congress with their staff. Like, number one, physically, the offices are tiny. You can fit like maybe 5 people, but a petition allows us to bring in 40,000, 100,000, et cetera, voices showing like your constituents want this. Teachers, law enforcement, veterans, like, we need all of these channels of people to stand up for the assault weapons ban so that Congress knows this is a good thing to vote for.
Yeah. And again, there's so much of this work that's fallen on the people directly impacted by the mass shootings. Teachers and educators bear so much of this burden. And, it's teachers already just absolutely do the most. And
like, it's not okay. Like, what have we done? So that would be the answer, is we'd love to hear your voice on our petitions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really important. Okay. Is there hope? I feel defeated.
Yes. Holy shit. Actually, I'm going to turn this over to Lisa, because we talked about this earlier, just about like how you've had this conversation with your friends.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've had so many conversations lately where people are like, this is so sad. I have a kid now and I just feel so absolutely hopeless, or I live in a state where this is never going to get passed, or my representatives and senators won't listen to me. But like, no, I was just a pissed off person for several years who would see these shootings happen and be like, oh, I felt overwhelmed by the grief and the impossibility of the situation until I started getting involved in this work. And now I'm like, no, I can do this. We can do this. Like we are holding hands and doing this together. The government answers to us and we need to tell them what we want. And that is to end mass shootings. We want to save kids' lives. We want to save human lives. We want it to be safe to go to the grocery store, to a place of worship, like to a yoga studio, to a parade, to a classroom. Like we want to we refuse to accept that this is normal for our generation and future generations. Like it was so sad. I'm sure everyone here can relate to this, but like my kid got moved to a new classroom at his daycare. And the first thing I thought was, oh, it's the room right next to the entrance. Like what a sad reality. I just refuse to accept this is normal. So
it's not,
it's
not normal, or this is not normal.
It's
so much hope because this existed. Again, like we're coming back to the basics, guys. This law existed and we just want it back. And like this is a uniquely American problem and Americans can solve it. So we want to do that.
And getting involved in this work has really empowered me to feel like we can make that change. Like, yes, is it demoralizing sometimes going into some of these meetings and having some of these conversations where people are like, meh. But like, there's also so many conversations we've had that are inspiring. And I do really feel like change is happening and we can lead that. So I'd rather be on the forefront of it than kind of sitting back and accepting this is normal. So I absolutely have hope and I don't feel defeated. And just knowing that there are 300 people on this call with us right now gives me more hope. So I hope that we can really help everyone here feel empowered to own this change with us because there's so much potential here.
And like, do you care if I share the takeaways?
Please.
Okay. Because I think like staying loud and staying consistent beyond the media cycle is so important. So remember that your voice matters. Like somebody messaged me earlier today being like, I'm trying to come to DC. I know I'm just one voice. And I was like, no. You are a voice in this fight. And like collectively, because if everyone thought like that, no one would come, right? So collectively, we are a huge voice and we can have public pressure influence public policy.
And every new voice that we have is a voice that we didn't have yesterday. So, and again, it's incremental. Like I recruited some people to join this organization. They're recruiting people to join this organization and just join the fight in general, right? Like it's such a big fight. We're going up such a big hill. We need all the voices that we can. So my team, the communications team, has kind of a vibes list of bullets. And like one of the things is like, do what you can when you can. Like done is better than perfect. And like anything you can do is something that wouldn't have been done yesterday. So anything you can do, following on social media, sharing the content, calling Schumer, whatever. It's so important.
So we have a bunch of our volunteers have put together this insanely awesome toolkit, which basically is like, here's 5 things you can do right now, links to all this stuff, and you will feel empowered. Because I know a lot right now, unfortunately, Nashville activated a whole new community, which is the sad reality. And we know that until something is done, it won't be the last. And so we want to make sure that people have something to hold on to. Like, okay, if I feel paralyzed, I know I can do this. I know this can make an impact. So we just launched this today. So if you find any typos, let us know. But wemarchforth.org/toolkit, and you can download it. As we talked about donations, like we saw such a spike in donations after Nashville, which again is heartbreaking, but the majority of them were small donations from a ton of people, and it makes the biggest difference. It's literally mirroring everyone using their voice and making a big difference to influence change. Making those calls every day, it's repetitive, it's annoying, we get it, it's important. And then like Lisa said at the top of this, like galvanizing your own network, your friends and family. I think we've all gotten to a place where we no longer can say like, you know what, we're not going to talk about things that are like icky or uncomfortable. Like this is our reality. This is our kids' reality. There's a generation of kids who have just grown up in lockdown and think that it's normal. And so it is on us to stand up with them and say enough. That's my soapbox.
I can't really sum it up any better than that. So I think I just really hope that if you've been on this call and you're like fired up and you're like, heck yes, I have 1 hour a week, or I'm just going to follow on social, or like, I'm going to come to the march, like, please join us, look up other TVP groups, do what you can. the more voices we can have to gang up against the NRA, the better. So yeah, I think we'll share the toolkit and a survey. And is there anything else you want to say, Kitty?
I know that this is heavy work, and I know that this is heavy subject matter. And we, like Lisa and I and all of our volunteers, know this because we've had many a mental breakdown and days that we've bawled and cried. We are here to be that consistent pressure in DC so that you don't have to, but these are other ways that you can support this overall mission. This is one element of gun violence, as we talked about, but it worked, it's effective, and it can immediately save lives. There's nothing stopping them from passing it.
And we can do this. Congress could pass these bills tomorrow.
Yes.
So
thank you for taking time out of your Tuesday within a 24 hours notice and spending almost an hour with us and learning. And I hope that it was beneficial. We'll have a survey, so if it wasn't, please put that feedback in there. We're learning. And then if you can make it to DC, we would love to see you there.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining. Sincerely, thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. And thank you, Kitty, for
thanks, Lise.
everything.
Bye, everyone.